Guy wanted to talk about his trade. What did they instantly do? Talk to him about buying another vehicle. They hit the guy like a grand slam to try to steal his trade, and he walked out and left. They need a strong process. I mean, not to beat that drum, but I mean, you got to have a strong process, and you got to help your people.
Process is black and white. Process, we do this every single time, every single day. Why we keep treating acquisition or sales type leads, trade type leads, like a sales lead. And I'm going to spend 60 seconds on this to give you guys some insight, and consider this free, because I mean, I probably should charge everyone watching this 10 grand for what I'm about to say.
Are you wasting your time and money on inefficiencies in the business? Are sales down and lead conversion rates are low? Are you having problems building or maintaining inventory levels? What does it really take to win in the automotive industry?
Get the cars that make sense for your store rather than just wishing at an auction. So it gives you that better control.
With over 25 years of experience, Darrell Steed isn't just another industry voice. He's the guy who's out there solving real problems for dealers just like you.
They'll even say in the Pacific Northwest where you're at that it's a tougher market. It's, it's tougher to find cars. The market's a little bit softer. And in the midst of all this, your turn doubled and your profit's up 75%.
Yes.
The truth hurts only when it should. Are you ready to hear the truths? Darrell is here to unpack the hard truths and the proven strategies that will take your dealership from struggling to soaring. And he is taking it all in the streets, with real talk, open dialogue, unfiltered conversations. This is the podcast series, Street Smarts, powered by SmartWolf Consulting.
Hello, everybody. This is Darrell Steed. Welcome to Street Smarts, powered by SmartWolf Consulting. I'm your host, and today we are going to be driving into the world of business excellence. And when I say that we have a real partner, a true partner in every sense of the word, we do, because we have been January here. For over 10 years, I have had the pleasure working shoulder to shoulder with Ben. And let me tell you, we have created dynamics from Team S&S, we'll get into that later, to even collaboration that feels almost magical in the way that we get things done. He's not just a business partner. His relentlessness to be a student of the craft and constantly learn new things is kind of one of those things where you aspire to and you want your staff to see. His expert experience with clients and partners kind of makes you want to figure out, how do you replicate Ben and put him in your store? Ben stands out in the industry by often marked by complacency with his proactive approach, need for winning, and absolute refusal to fail. He always is ready to lend a hand, opportunity to serve, and in his spare time, he just happens to run an absolutely fantastic off-road experience with razors, four-wheel drives, whether you want to go to the Rubicon, Sand Mountain, Coos Bay. He is a man of all kinds of talent. So let's get started in the streets with Ben January. Ben, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Darrell, happy to be here. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. So Ben, with life and everything else, and I mean, let's get real. I don't know if you actually ever slow down, but let's assume you do. Where are you winning in life right now? How's life going? Tell us what's going well and what you're working on.
Good stuff. Good. There's no time to slow down. It's like people used to always tell me, you gotta be patient. I just don't have time for that. There's just way too much going on. I've always set excessive goals for myself ever since I was very young, whether it was just to get enough money to go to the movies or, a little bit older to take a vacation or whatnot. And some of them I didn't make on the timeline I wanted to make them, but I eventually hit the goals. So I've always been huge about that. And just doing fun stuff. We recently got back from Disneyland. My wife and I took our two boys there. We were hoping they'd make it till noon. That would be like success for us. But they both made it all till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, which we were ready to take the rest of the day off. So that was really good. But just enjoying it. Love working with dealers. As you know, I got into the car business for time. My dad had Alzheimer's at the time. I was a GM of a Chevy and a Nissan store, and I have two special needs boys. So time became very important. So being able to do what I do now, consulting with stores and really helping them through Cox Automotive, it's really cool, especially helping out the small stores, the big stores, anybody that just wants to be better, and it always bums me out when I deal with stores where they know what to do, but won't put forth the effort to make it happen, or they don't know the process. It's like saying, hey, gosh, I see a, you know, baseball player on TV and I want to hit just like him. Well, that guy has practiced hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours and swung the bat thousands of times. It doesn't just happen, but they want it to a lot of times in the car business. So I enjoy teaching them and working with them. And like my claim to fame, as I've already messed it all up multiple times and figured out a few things along the way that work out. So happy to be here.
No, I agree. And when we talk about this, so I mentioned it in the introduction, so we might as well get right to it so that people understand, so they don't feel like they're in the dark. We might as well just go hit Team SNS so that people know what that means. Is Ben and I worked for Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer for quite some time. And Ben was, the best in the land. So I just wanted to be around that type of influence so I could see exactly how he did it. And we created the Team SNS because we would go into stores and it would be, saving, selling, and servicing, right? It was like, if it started an S, we did it. But oddly enough, it was never selling it as a forego. It was always the service and the save, right? Of what do you need, teaching the customer, helping them, giving them a solution, which Ben and I both shared this. I think we both share it still to this day is I don't need to come and sell you anything. Ben's not going to sell you anything. We're here to service you and provide you solutions to save you from headaches. And then, that typically then leads to you want to empower yourself, or you might look at something else. So it's that service to sales model rather than coming in and telling you, here's the shiny new car and trying to get you to buy into it. So Team SNS is kind of one of those things. We are still batting 1,000%. Okay. Never a lost account when both of us were.
Right.
Now, when you're seeing in the auto industry now, because we did have a few things happen over the last couple of years. We had a few storms, few pandemics, few other things. What do you see the biggest challenges right now, just in the industry as itself?
Right now it seems to be more separated between the top and the bottom than I've seen in 26 years I've been in the car business. And what I mean by that is you got the guys that are really taking the bull by the horns and making the best of every situation they can. And then you got the ones that are whining about it, that it's, it's cold outside, it's rainy outside, it's hot outside, it's whatever the excuse is. And they drill themselves into the ground and just don't make it happen. The first part of that is you get the guys that are like, okay, I know what to do. I know how to do it. I got to get my team together. I got to, pay my guys right. I got to really work on a process and make something happen, but also be willing to change. When I first started selling cars, it was, customers would come in, they didn't know if they wanted new or used, car or truck, 2-door or 4-door. I'm dating myself there, but now they know what they want. You just literally have to not screw up. And the dealers that try not, the old phrase, fight or ride them, don't fight them, could not be more true than it is right now. You literally just have to not screw up, and they're probably going to buy that car they came in on. But dealers don't have a good process to handle customers. They don't answer the questions typically dealer or customers ask. They have automated responses. They have their agenda. It's like a phone call. When they call and ask about questions, or an email, they send out automatic responses that are just crap templates. In fact, I mystery shopped a store a while back on a truck, asked about a tow package and a few things. They sent me a response on a Honda Accord. You guys are killing me, and the deal was beaten and wanting way more leads. And I told him, and it kind of hurt his feelings. I says, you guys aren't good enough to get more leads. You're better off. I think Grant Cardone said this, is to leave the phone off the hook and let customers expect or think that you're so busy you can't even answer and hope they show up.
Oh boy, we're going really old school with that. I remember when he said that.
But they look at me like I'm crazy, and I said, look, I'm here to help you. It's your call, your store. You guys do what you guys want to do. But when you have sales guys that are answering leads like that, or they get them on the lot, and then the first thing they want to do is get them on a test drive, you got to make sure you have the right car. You got to make sure you do a walk around and things like that. And same thing with trades. You get dealers all the time whining about gross. It's too hard to buy. Auctions cost too much. Okay, what's your trade penetration? What? If they don't even know the answer to that question, it's like, okay, you got a lot of room to grow, but they got to be willing to do it.
Well, I think it's interesting you bring that up. So a lot of the things you're talking about is directly where I live, specifically in this podcast, because my goal by this podcast was, one, we're not going to bring on executives onto here, not because they're not good guys. I'm sure they all are, but we all hear the talking points, right? We all hear the agenda that they want you to hear. And Street Smarts is actually a program to deal with, obviously, off the street purchasing and acquisition, trade volume. but I want to deal with the people that are in the streets, the ones that see it, right? Because we hear all the talking points you get at cars.com and Auto Trader, get these, and you get these agendas, and they're like, things are good, this and that. And you're like, okay, but what are dealers actually dealing with, right? And so having you and seeing that, what I think is interesting though, when you bring this up is like, whether they're complaining or they're like, they don't know what to do, is it really comes down to most of the dealers that I'm talking to that you're probably seeing have lost that ability to create the connection and experience. Like you said, if you just don't mess this up, like you're proud, like there's a high probability you're going to make this car deal or buy this car or whatever it may be. And it really comes down to that experience of, for so long, the auto industry really worked into this. We push our agenda. This is how we do it. So that's what has to be done. And then we slowly saw that you had to kind of create a different dynamic. And when you had said, like, you're seeing the ones that are way out here outperforming and the ones that aren't, oddly enough, those ones, when I go in there, have a red carpet type experience. They take care of the customer. They understand, why am I going to sit there and try to tell the customer my agenda when they don't care? They want to be treated as an individual. They want to be treated and empowered. And so I think it's really interesting that you're seeing that as well, right? And obviously the way you phrase it, it still comes down to, guys, if you don't have that experience, if people don't want to come do business with you, or when they leave, they don't sit there and go tell people like, man, that's where you want to go. Like, man, I felt like $1 million client. Like, then they're going to go like this. Like, if you're just ho hum or you're the average guy, they're going to be like, there's nothing about you that's memorable. Mm-hmm. Right. And I know you as a professional and what you've been doing in both careers that you have, right? Because in essence, you have a secondary career with what you do in the off-road environment. My kids actually just asked, like, hey, are we going back to Sandmount like immediately? Because it's coming up on Halloween. I was like, well, we'll have to see. But when you're looking at that, is understanding, like, it's about that connection, making sure that they know, like you said, you're here to help them. You're not here to do it for them. You're here to show them the way, and then they can grow. Now, when we look at automotive, new cars are great. Anyone that's watched this podcast by now knows that new cars are fine to me, but they serve no relevance. I live my life in the used car spectrum because, one, it influences everything in the market or everything in your dealership. Two, it's one of one. It's unique. New cars, okay, unlike the store that Ben had to deal with, right, that he wanted a truck and they gave him a Honda Accord. That is a wildly interesting. However, if I'm looking for a Honda Accord, other than if we know what trim level it is, it's the same car, different color. When you get into a used car, we have miles, we have clean Carfaxes, we have whether or not it's been maintained, we have, lots of different moving parts on that vehicle. And so it's one of one, and it's a unique condition assessment of making that customer also feel empowered. When you're out there in the world, you're dealing with dealers, and I know you talk to quite a few of these dealers in the market, especially in the, in the West Coast. Like, what do you see in used cars right now? Like, where are you seeing, one, where are you seeing the dealers that are having success? Where are they having it? And then two, where do you see that biggest challenge in the used car pre-owned strategies right now?
Well, right now, and it's not the most in time, but it's so prevalent now to put in the effort. So, for example, there's some really good used car independent stores up north that just mop the earth with the big franchises. And they do that because they spend the time to buy the right vehicles. And we all know, if anybody's ever sold cars or any part of a dealership for a right time, you can't pay too much for a good car, but you can overpay for a fast, easy buy. In other words, if you just want to make it easy and buy 15 cars in 30 minutes from Enterprise, you can totally do that. Your gross average is going to be very low. You may have low cost in your service department, but you're not going to make any money, and no one's really going to be like, great job. Those aren't even base hits. Those are basically like bunch you got lucky. You don't have to swing for the fences all the time, but let's face it, you got to be able to get good car deals. And to be able to buy them isn't just acquiring them at the auction. It's making sure, if you have a service department, that everybody that comes in within those parameters of what you're looking for at least gets a conversation or an offer. When you think about it like sports, the more times you get up to bat, the more chances you have to hit the ball. Plain and simple. Well, if you only ask one person in your shop every day if they're thinking about maybe upgrading or get rid of their vehicle, you can still buy a couple of those, but your best chance is to buy one. If you ask everybody that fits the parameters you're looking for, you're going to get a lot higher percentage of cars. But you got to put forth the effort. You got to make sure to inspect them. I took a rig just this last 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to mystery shop buying a vehicle. So I went to one store. did a Kelly Blue Book ICO, came up with a reasonable number, went in, just said, hey, I want you guys to verify it. 8 minutes, the guy went over it with me. I even told him a couple of the things that went wrong with it. He hit me about $800 higher than it actually was through the KBB original offer that I put. The car was perfect, 136,000 mile, hole in the seat big enough to put a 5-gallon bucket. So yeah, he could have bought that car from the consumer, but the problem there is when you get that car in the shop, it's going to get blasted. Radio doesn't work, giant hole in the seat. When you see things like that, they're not taken care of. So, from the car business side, you got to have a good process, and you don't have to beat the customers up. Be like, man, look at this thing's hammered. But like I learned from you, when you touch the seat and you ask them 1 or 2 questions, you think we can repair this, or we might have to replace this, huh? And you have a little fun with it. No one on earth is going to see a 10-inch hole in the seat and go, bro, you guys got people that can fix that. Come on. Then you look at them like, man, and we have a genie and a wand out back that we use as well. So you got to have a process to go through it, because we've all made a bad buy and we've all been bit on some used car or something that came in. There's a dealer I went to recently that had a squeak in a Ford diesel. I said, you guys don't have a lot of experience with those. He goes, no. He goes, we thought it was a belt. Turns out it's exhaust manifold bolts. 26 hours to replace. 26 hours of labor. You have to pull the cab off. So we stole this truck. I don't even know how many thousands they lost. But the shop bill was north of $5,000 by the time they got done. So, but if they'd had a process and did a check-in, just like I said, don't you guys normally inspect the ICOs when they come in? Well, yeah, but on this one, well, that's probably why you have the process, is to make sure you don't get bit like this, because this huge loss just canceled out 2 or 3 great buys that you just had. So I'm definitely seeing a lot of that still. But on the other hand, the stores that have, I go back to like CarMax. It's 45 minutes. You go and you get a value. It's straightforward. It's very consistent, and they either sell it or not. If dealers would adapt their own process and make sure they run the customer through it every single time, plus customers like that. They know what to expect. But if they come in, like another example I've got from a store, guy wanted to talk about his trade. What did they instantly do? Talk to him about buying another vehicle, because that's what the salesman gets mostly paid on. Needless to say, it wasn't a short time after. They hit the guy like a grand slam to try to steal his trade, and he walked out and left. And I asked him, I says, that guy said he was here before. Yeah, this is his second time in. You guys did this to him twice? I mean, he's not only going to go to the next store, he's going to lay down for everything if the next store just remotely pays attention to him. He came in twice. You still blasted his Prius. He was on a car you had in stock, and you still focused on his car he wants to buy, opposed to the first thing he said, can you give me any more money for my trade?
It's funny that you say that, right? Because when it comes back to the experience connection, but you hit a couple things, and I definitely want to spend a few minutes on it talking about it, is because it's one, it's in my wheelhouse, but 2, I think it's really important for dealers to hear what I'm about to repeat what you said and then really put some perspective on it. The first one you said is, when people are coming in there, if they don't have a process. Now, any of you guys that don't know me, that's where I live, is in process and consistency. Because I promise you, the tab that you see above my head, Street Smarts, that's a brand new program, part of SmartWolf. And it's all about process. It's all about reinforcement. And I build buying centers. I build some of the most effective, and I have built the largest buying centers in the country when it comes to volume and gross. And what it came down was process and consistency. And when you talked about that, you even went into one further, which I think is great, was like, if you're doing trade evaluations, buying evaluations, service evaluations, these are all important, which, just so we're all clear, guys, a buying center is an accompaniment of all your acquisition strategies. It's not one piece, it's multiple pieces that move into this. But when you follow that process, is that you need to make sure that you know what's wrong with the car. Like, you have to take it through the same process, whether I propose that you always do it with the customer, because then it makes it a conversation rather than an attack. And yes, I have developed a walk around, which is within the Street Smarts web academy that is now available, which Ben gave you one question out of it, but it is in-depth psychology of customer interaction, to where I promise you, once you see the walk around, they can't say no. It is impossible. So, but now we get to the same connection point, right? Where at least they don't have to agree with us, but they at least understand where it came from. So I think it's really important to talk, like, just to reemphasize that, guys, process is important. And the other thing is, which is part of SmartWolf, is process is black and white, so that everyone understands this, guys. Guidelines have gray areas. We kind of do this. That's a guideline. We do this on Mondays, but not on Fridays. Guideline. Process, we do this every single time, every single day. And it doesn't matter. And here's where it gets interesting, whether or not you have a real process. If Ben owns a store and he comes in to get his trade in, right? And he's the owner, does his car get put through the exact same process? It should. Now I get it. Ben's going to go like this. I don't care what we do. He's making sure his people do the same process. He's going to put whatever number he wants on it. He's the owner. He can do whatever he wants. But your people underneath you should be following the exact same process regardless of whose vehicle it is. Why? It's part of that experience. Not only that, is that the moment that you say, don't worry about this one, you've now created a dynamic that it can be, there's exceptions to every rule, right? Like we're going to create the exception when it's not necessary. So the other thing you talked about, which I think is uniquely interesting is, and I think this goes across the sales portal in everything in automotive, is someone says they want to know what their trade value is, or they're looking to sell their car. And it perplexes me on so many levels why we keep treating acquisition or sales type leads, trade type leads, like a sales lead, even if they say they want to buy a car. And I'm going to spend 60 seconds on this to give you guys some insight, and consider this free, because I probably should charge everyone watching this 10 grand for what I'm about to say. If they sent in a trade-in, Lynn, ISO, ICO, AccuTrade Instant Offer, Edmunds Price Promise, whatever versions of them that are out there, and they say they want to buy a car, I agree. We should try to sell them a car. However, until they get to your store, until they give you permission to sell them a car, that lead, that opportunity is an acquisition opportunity. It is all about ensuring they feel good about how you're handling their vehicle, their purpose, why they gave you their information. And once you button that up and you get that all nice and tight, now we can ask if they would like information on the vehicle they're buying. But when we sit there and want to put it in the sales funnel, and we sit there and we want to do all these silly things, well, herein lies the issue. Okay. Don't raise your hand. You're watching a podcast. It'd be weird. People are just going to think something's wrong with you. But I want you to think about it in your brain. How many times do you guys in your store, and I know Ben can comment to this right after I'm done, you walk in there and you're like, oh, our sales penetration, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. And if you're one of the good ones, this doesn't apply to you, right? You figured it out. You probably do exactly what I just said. But that you're inconsistent in your sales process or your closing ratios or in your individual sources, AutoTrader, Cars.com, and they're up and down. Why would you want to be that inconsistent in your acquisition strategy? Right? Why would you want to do that? And the last thing you talked about, which I think is interesting, is compensation, right? Of like how you take care. I propose to, and I promise you, get on my podcast and prove me wrong. I will have any guest to light me up and prove me wrong on this point. Acquisition is 10 times more important than anything you do in your store, including sales. Because you can't sell what you don't have. And even franchise stores, guys, you have new cars. Anytime you want more of them, just make a phone call. They'll have them for you there soon. Unless you're Toyota and they basically say, nope, you're not getting more than a 20-day supply, because they have figured out exactly how to keep themselves popular. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to used cars, if you buy them, you have them, you sell them. If it doesn't work for you, you can wholesale them. But when we sit there and treat sale or acquisition as a third or fourth or fifth importance, right? Service, I think acquisition's number one, service is number two. If you want to flip those, I'm even okay with that, because service is your bread and butter. That's how you operate. But in all fairness, if we don't buy it, we can't sell it, which then we can't get the service. Mm-hmm. But if we buy the cars, buy them right, buy them with a plan, buy them strategically, right? And you have that process to it, you can sell whatever you want. You have a lot of options. Then I propose to obviously propose private party, trade-ins, service drive. Yes, there's other places you can get cars, and I'm not saying that those are bad. These are controllable. These are things you guys can do. These are things you can be able to process too. Auction, yep, you should go to the auction. It should be a piece of your strategy. I don't want anyone to think that I'm anti-auction. Okay, but auction should be less than 5% of your strategy. It should be, for instance, Jason Rice talks about like, hey, you've got lot pop and you sold a car and you see you have 5 other leads on it. That is a great time to go to the auction. Try to replace that car as quick as possible, because you have 5 other customers looking for that similar car. You might not be able to find it in your trade cycle or your service drive or your private party acquisition, because it may not be out there to get, but the auction might have it. That's how auctions are effective. But to sit there and go be reactive and get and have to overpay. I talked to a guest 2 days ago, and this is steady. And I'd be interested in what you think about this, Ben. The average transactional value of the auctions, and we'll just use the big one, the one that has a big M. I think it's Mannheim. I'm not quite sure if that's what they, but
That's the word on the street.
That's the word on the street. 92 to 97% cost to market is the price that they're going through for. 92 to 97%. Now, guys, just put that in your head for all you guys that are watching this. I'm curious. Again, please come on my podcast and tell me how you're doing this. You buy all these cars from the auction. How are you profitable? We haven't got transport in there. We haven't got a safety. We haven't got our packs because every store has a pack. And we still need profit? I don't understand. Are we really selling cars for 135% on a regular? I know what we did in COVID. I know that was real. 135 seemed to be about the normal. But I'm pretty sure we've settled down. So I'd be curious, Ben, when you're seeing that, is like knowing those factors and knowing that dealers having that, what are people doing? Like, what do you see people doing? Where are they starting in the used car side or the acquisition side? Where are they starting to like address that? Are they addressing that? Or are they just kind of on the hope plan still?
A lot of them, unfortunately, are on the hope plan. And it really kind of craps me out when I do the math. It's like the customers back in the day that wanted a $250 payment. You go, Mr. Customer, this is a $30,000 vehicle. I'm not great at math, but it's 0% interest for 5 years. That's $500. So I do the same thing on math when they're buying cars. We split the sales guys $100. Okay, so let me get this straight. You can buy this car from Mr. and Mrs. Jones out of your own service drive right now, and you don't pay any auction fees, you don't pay any transportation, and you have it right now. You don't have to wait at all, but you won't even come close to spiffing your own employees what you pay an auction for. And it's funny, some of their faces, the realization's like, oh. And I said, guys, why don't you just try something crazy? Just crazy. Let's say you pay $750 a car. That's insane. Is it? Okay, pull up your last buy sheet from Mannheim or Odessa or whoever.
Yeah.
And some of them will actually do it because they're like, well, yeah, that's a good point. And they'll pull it up and it's like $980. And $750 is too much because I said, what do you have to lose? You're paying it anyway to someone you don't even know. I says, I'm telling you right now, if you paid that out in cash on a Friday, say you bought 3 cars, not changing the world, but you had 3 salespeople $750 or split it up however you want in cash, you don't even have to say a word. You don't even have to say a word. Just hand them the cash. Everybody will ask, what's that for? And as soon as they hear, your process will start. Hey, what's this? How do I do that? How can I get better? I mean, it will kind of grow. And then I hear, well, the service manager gets a little butthurt about it, or the service writer doesn't like it because he wants the RO ticket. Guys, I've written thousands of repair orders. There's no RO in the world for an automobile short of Ferrari or the high-end pasta rockets. You're making $200-$300 for one repair order. I don't care if you sold 3 motors on the same car. And they says, and I hear the things, the sales manager, and then this. I said, okay, do this. Spiff the sales manager $100, spiff the service manager $100, and then pay the sales guy $250 and the service writer $250. So there's $700. You're still money ahead, and I'm telling you, everybody in the process will be all for it. And it's funny, the handful of stores that do it, despite themselves, buy at least 5 a week.
Now, guys, let's real quick take a moment before Ben finishes, okay? Because Ben said something, and I don't want any of you guys to turn this podcast off because he said something very crazy. He said $750. Now, Ben and I typically agree on almost everything. Ben has lost his mind at $750. Okay, and I want to be in a store where he tells them this, and anyone swallows that without them losing their mind. Now, do I think that's too much? I agree with Ben. Right. Ben's telling you it's $890 at Mannheim. That's before transport and PSI. So right now it's $1,290 on average. And that's, oh, by the way, for cars $35,000 or less, because it's a sliding buy fee. So you start getting into the 40 and 50s. Holy hell, you could get $1,600, $2,000 a car into this bad boy. So when you think about that, $750 for some stores, maybe you're in, let's say, Chico, California. That might be too much. Okay. But maybe 500 isn't, right? But if you're in LA, $750, you probably would need that. Why? Well, LA is expensive, and you need something that's going to really get people motivated to want to do it. But I really wanted to hone in on that one to obviously just kind of make you guys chill out. $750 isn't as much as you think when you actually do the math. But more importantly is Think about what he just said too, guys. That's a real like mic drop of like information. All right. Ben will be sending you guys all an invoice. So we'll see who watches this. The invoice is in the mail. Is $750. And we'll just use that number. And you do 100 to the service manager, 100 to the 250 to the writer in this, and then 100 to the sales manager that's on his team if you had teams or whatever else. Okay, fine, everyone gets a piece. If so, that creates the level of connection to where no one's fighting with each other. How many, and just take the managers out of it, right? Because they should be good managers, they shouldn't need anything. But if you're kicking them down, great. If you gave a service advisor 250 and the salesperson 250 and all you had to do is some paperwork and a conversation, I don't know a service advisor in the world that makes $200 on any RO, barring a complete engine swap. Maybe it's close then, right? If they get 5, 6, 7% of a bill, whatever it is. So when you think about that, do you think they're going to be champions of pitching people? And oh, by the way, guys, you buy the car, the RO then goes internal, and that person still keeps the RO. 2 for 1, just so we're clear. So you're not taking the service work out, because that would be counteractive. But how many service advisors are going to be like this? Hey, we now have an option. And this is something that I preach. I actually go in and show you how to build it. Part of the SmartWolf or Street Smarts combination is right now you guys offer 2 service strategies. 2. If you don't know what they are, okay, it's very simple. You guys have this is what it needs, or you could call it good, better, best if you're doing the 3 things, but it's here's what you definitely, this is everything it needs, and here's what our recommended services are just to make sure it's good. Okay. And it's worked forever. And service advisors are easily the most trusted person in your dealership. It's not even a question. Okay. So why would we not want to empower the most trusted person in our store to then deliver a 3rd option? What if, big what if here, guys? I know we're going to get real out in space on this one. You could fully fix, temporarily fix, or replace or cash out, right? Trade up or trade out. If they said, and here's where you become a service model. Truly a service model. We're giving you options. Okay, you have a $6,500 RO. That's what it takes to fix this car. Then you tell them your actual cash value on this car right now is $4,600. Is it good business? Is it good customer service to tell that person to fix that car for $6,500? I mean, it's good for the store. I mean, we won't get into that argument. It's 100% good for the store. What if you said it's worth $4,600 and they said, okay, so I don't owe any money. I can get $4,600 cash, right? And they can put that down on another car. So now you get that car. Now the service RO, we're not going to do anything to that car. It's probably a wholesale car. That's probably why it has issues. You wholesale it. You make a little bit of money. That's good for the store. Always got to do what the store, good for the store first. Now they buy another car. Now aren't they coming back to you? Aren't they their service customer for the next 3 to 5 years? What are we doing to make sure we engage our service customers to get them coming back rather than, and I just had this experience happen with one of the buying centers I bought today, got a phone call on it. Customer just spent $5,900 and some odd dollars. So they said, hey, I'm looking to sell this. I still need to spend $1,000 to get it to where it needs to be. Want to see what it's worth because, maybe I just sell the car. I didn't know what the car was, but then they called me and they said, hey, Darrell, we have a problem because this customer's upset. So I said, okay, I log in, see what they're talking about. Yep, the value of this car is $900 to $1,400 tops. It's a 2006, it's got 140,000 miles on it. It definitely is not the prettiest pig in the farm. And so I was like, wait a minute, they paid this RO? Yeah, they already fixed it. Did we do a valuation on this car before they did? Nope. What do you think happened after that? Spoiler alert. Yeah, the GM got involved because we told them to fix this car. It still needs $1,000. The car is worth $1,200, $1,400 tops if we wanted to extend. If we wanted to lose money, $2,000, right? And so he says, what would you do? I said, oh, if it's me, yeah, I refund them their money. I eat that on the chin because that person is going to go to every single person and they are going to piss vinegar all over you. They are going to tell everybody how you charge them $6,000 for a car that's worth $1,000. I would tell them we're going to refund your money and we'll buy the car and write that off to like in a learning, like that review, that person out there will cost you well over $5,000. They'll destroy your service business for everyone they talk to. So they ended up doing exactly that. And I'm not telling people to do that, but it's like, guys, what if you had that option? If you saw this car was like an old car and everything else and it needed this much work, what if you offered them a different alternative? We could have got them into a pre-owned car. You could have got them into a new car. Just a different way to think about it. But it's like, guys, what does that experience look like? Right? What's been said. If you tell your staff this is how you're paying out, your office is going to have referrals for you. They're going to be like, my friend's looking to sell their car. They're looking to like you'll instantly. And here's the thing: I don't want you guys to get lost on that, right? When you do these pay plans, because that is aggressive, and I love it. I'm all for it. Ben knows it. He's seen pay plans I put together. They are definitely all about empowering people. What you do need to make sure, though, is when you do this, you have a process behind it, right? Because you don't want it to become Animal Farm either, where it's like just chaos and everyone's online and everyone's talking to the same customers and different messages. So you want to have like, guys, you're going to get paid like this if you're part of the service team. You're going to get paid like this if it's a referral, but we don't want you out there doing stuff because our buying center already does it. Like, you need to make sure you have very clear communication. But why wouldn't you want to empower every person in your store to be an advocate to come do business with you? Right? I don't. If there's a reason, hey, I'm not in your store. There might be a reason, but sounds like I could turn a buying team that's 4 people into 100 people just by having some clear communication and a pretty effective or aggressive pay plan, right? So I love you brought that up, because I think it's something that people need to talk about, right? Is service drive is one of the harder things to get enveloped. It is one of the harder things to make sure it's consistent, because it's your service department. I said it's one of the harder things. I did not say it's impossible, right? You say this is what we're doing. You just, okay, let's clear thought, strategic, right? And you do it. Could you imagine a store that writes 30 ROs a day, 900 ROs a month, and somehow magically gets a 2% closing ratio? Just 2. Nothing crazy. That's just 18 acquisitions you didn't have the month before. And then use the car guy math and say 70% of those are retail. Okay, we just created 12 to 13 additional deals. Right? There are these ways you can go about it, but as Ben also said, it does take time, right? In the sense of you're going to have to put people towards it, or focus, or you don't just go like this. Hey guys, we're going to start buying stuff from service. Okay. So just let everyone know.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have some structured thought. It's not the light switch, right? We all know what the light switch is good for. It makes everyone look really good. You just turn it off. And listen, I'm like George Clooney, Brad Pitt. Who do you want me to be? You turn that light switch off. Sure. You turn it back on and you go like this. Horror movie. Okay. That's what the light switch is good for. So, kind of talking about that, Ben, when you're working with dealers, what would you say, like when it comes to acquisition, like or I wouldn't say acquisition, just used cars in general, because we know that takes a lot more effort in conversation. What does it look like when it comes to like training or process building, or like where's how much time do they spend on making sure that both the salespeople, managers, anyone involved feels really comfortable and is confident in what they're doing when it comes to either training or conversation? Or do you see it still this is what we've always done?
I see both. So I go back to the good old phrase, how often should we do daily training? And it's comical how many stores couldn't even tell me the last, not only like day of the week, but day in the month they did training with their guys. But yet when the sales guys come up and ask a stupid question to the desk, which there are no stupid questions, just stupid answers, then they get pissed at them. And, I've been at a couple stores recently where like the sales guy came in, he got a customer with a Corvette, wants to buy a new Super Duty truck. Title in hand, like literally the title is on the table. Sales guy is fairly new. Don't know how new, but you can tell he's a little green, maybe 5-6 months in, give or take, looking for help. So instead of getting up and going out and helping him, the sales manager just kind of bashes him. Well, did you ask this? Did you do this? Did you do this? You could tell the sales guy's face is, I got nothing. I literally don't know what to do. He's asking for help. I almost got up and went out and shut the car deal for him to show him, hey, if you're just cool and help the guy out because he's maybe not done it a few times. So there's a super example of he didn't know what to do. He didn't have a process. He didn't have, how to handle objections, of the vehicles you're looking at. What made you interested in this one? Well, it's not blue. Is blue something to keep you from buying a car? Like they don't know all those things because they don't practice. They don't train. And typically it's because the sales manager had to learn a lot on his own, and he kind of went through the school of hard knocks. And so he's like, well, they were a jerk to me, I'm going to be a jerk to him. And then you go to the stores where they're super helpful. So there's a Lithia store up in Medford. Justin's the GM. And I tell you, that guy is incredible. There's lots of great car guys, but him recently, over the last couple of months, I'm up there. Sales guy needed help with something. He didn't even finish talking. Justin stood up from right behind the desk, and he's the GSM of a huge Lithia store. Goes out there, helps, talks to the customer, no problem. I mean, that sales guy's confidence, I swear the guy grew an inch in height just right there, because he knew I can just get help. When I need help, I just ask it. Bam, they're there to help me. And it's really cool. But then in other situations, you get sales guys that are always the 3, 5, 8 car guy. Is it really their fault? And there's some that can just get it. They'll just figure out the drive. They're relentless. Like you and I were just, hey, we got beat up, but no matter what, we figured it out. Let's face it, today's world is not always like that. And then you get the dealership that's complaining, man, we have lots of turnover. Well, it might be you, because they're not really helping them. You go through training from Dale Carnegie, Grant Cardone, Zig Ziglar. I mean, there's Joe Verdi, all of these things we used to do in the past. I've mentioned many of those names with stores, and I kid you not, I've had some that didn't even know one of them. I'm like, how do you not know one of these names? I mean, especially Grant Cardone, because he's on the radio, he's on the TV, not TV radio, but I mean, like all the podcasts, he's got tons of social media, everything. They don't take the time to do it. So the process, and just like when you and I used to go into stores, you'd go over some certain things, and they looked at you like you were just like the car Jesus in a way. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's really good, but he's not that good. But, when you get done, he is, because you got a consistent process. And then you say the same thing for 5 or 6 stores. And I think that's where sales guys fall a lot, because they do stuff different every time. It's like they're greeting, or they change the way they do stuff. So, we missed a miles on a car. And how do you miss miles on a car? If you sold cars for a week, there's no way to sell them without the miles. But sales guys still come to the desk after like 2 or 3 years. Oh shit, I forgot the miles. Like, it's like getting dressed. How many times you put your socks outside your shoes? It's pretty rare. You got a process to get dressed. But if they don't have the training and they don't have the follow through, or a process, or someone like, comes in like you used to do or still do and help out stores, they're just winging it. They're just constantly winging it. You gotta, I used to joke you and I would be, good doctors. People would die, but they'd go into surgery feeling good because we would just wing it. And sales guys do that too much as well. And it's a shame, because there's some really good sales guys that probably fall through the waist, or, fall through the cracks, and they end up just washing out because they don't have any support or process or training.
So, because obviously I wanted to hit that, just because I want to get your opinion on this. So, I've probably done this, I think, one other podcast, because obviously it was relevant, because there was someone that sees this and we talk about training. So, with SmartWolf, that's me, right? And I only have so many hours in the day. So I go in and I'll actually build the buying center, or I'll revitalize their used car acquisition strategy, from trades to service to whatever it is. But, I only take on 4 of those clients a year, because that is a heap load of work. Like, I'm in your store a couple days a week. If you're out of state, like I have one in Kansas City, then I go see you, for, a span of time, and then I'll everything's webinar. But it takes a lot, because you got to build all these pieces. You got to make sure it's working. You got to get that consistency model in. But I decided, I was like, we were talking about it, kind of like what we saw years ago, and I've been building towards getting to this point, was we created Street Smarts, which is going to be released here very shortly. You're actually the second person to see this background, because this brand just released this week. But we created, which I was actually elated to know this. No one's actually created a online web academy for used car acquisition and private party acquisition, like the basics, the foundational stuff that you need to know, conversations, follow-up strategies, how to hire people, pay plans, things of that nature. So I took the time and we built this out, mostly because now I can actually show, we'll say, guaranteed results if you follow the process of multi-million-dollar operations. These are not your trade-ins. Trade-ins that's special, right? That's part of your business. This is incremental business, from off-the-street purchases, if you don't have service drive, driving that in, to creating a more controllable aspect for you, so you don't have to go to the auction. So that's coming out. And then we even coupled into this a mastermind group, which I'd love to hear what you think about that, is both the Web Academy, and this is that we're going to cover. So let's say you did the Web Academy. Then we have the mastermind. It's obviously you're going to pay for both, but we cover each subject in depth each month, one subject, question and answers, processes, video, insights, whatever you need, but actual solutions. Because what we found in the industry, which I thought was interesting, is a lot of conversation, lots of it everywhere. But then there's like this huge gatekeeping thing of actually giving like a process or giving like so they're like, oh, here, yeah, this is kind of what we did. And they'll talk about it, but there's actually no, like, what can I go do right now? No one wants to give that up. They think there's like some magic button. And I was like, well, what would that be worth if like, hey, here's your web academy. You can teach the basics, your new hires, your managers, everyone would get value from this. And then if you wanted to take it one further, you could do the mastermind so that you could really get in depth if you wanted to learn. Because what I'd be interested in what your thoughts is, one, what do you think that does for the industry? But two, why don't companies invest, let's just say hypothetically, $1,000 a month in education or $500 a month in like trying to empower your people? And and the reason I ask this is GMs all the time say our people need to get better. Well, what are you doing to get better? And then what are you doing to ensure they get better? And I'm not talking about, well, our sales managers train them. Okay, well, if that's the case, and it gets back to, well, they hit the school of hard knocks. Safe to assume that what we did 25 years ago is a little different than we do it now. I'm safe assumption. I know that we're not allowed to throw deals at people's face anymore, and that's how I got trained. So when we look at that, it's like, where did the managers get their continued education to deal with millennials, zennials, Generation Alpha? Like, when you look at that, what do you think this is like? When you look at that, is like, one, why aren't people embracing it? Two, what do you think the construct or the value of this is to the market of being able to have something like this now for people to be able to do?
Well, it's huge, especially since the car business has changed so much. I mean, just in the time, like since you and I started, I mean, back in 1998, it's totally different 5 years after that. And right now it's totally different than 5 years ago. So to have something constant that's evolving with the current market is literally priceless. And think if a dealer just picked up one car deal a week, two car deals a week. I mean, big stores, when I was at Roseville Toyota, we sold 900 cars a month. I remember some of the guys getting upset about when the sales managers got on them about making an error. He goes, just think if everybody made one. That's 900 errors a month. Well, just think if everybody learned one thing on trades and you took in, say, 10 a month. That's 120 more trades a year. I don't care what dealership you are. They'd all want 120 more trades a year. So having something like that would be literally, I mean, priceless, because it's going to constantly evolve, constantly getting better, but it gives them a roadmap. You go into stores, you say, what are your goals? Sell cars, make money. Great. How do you do that? It's like sports. I want to win. Great. What's it take to win? You got to have all the team, the players, the this, the that. There's a lot to it. So to be able to literally lay out a digital roadmap opposed to an old school, okay, follow the blue line. We're going like 2 inches to the left. You got to have something new that keeps them going and keeps them engaged with it, but they got to know what's next. What do I do next? What do I do now? When a customer says this, I'm not taking that for my trade. Okay, no, I totally understand. I would want more if I were you too. Were you going to take care of these dents on the side and fix the stains in the bullet hole in the door? Or do you want us to go ahead and take it in the way it sits? What? And like buying stuff out of service. And anybody that's written service knows it's tough sometimes to give somebody a bill or an estimate that they can't pay. Sometimes it breaks your heart. And I don't care what the people are, what they look like, it doesn't matter. You can tell some people that money is so stressful to them, it's crazy. But then you can give them the option, say, hey, you know what? We'll take this in the way it is right now. No, you won't owe us $1. In fact, we'll give you money back. If you decide to upgrade to something different, we can help you with that too. But here's what we can give you for that right now. Wash your hands, stress-free, let's rock. There's a lot more to it than that. But once you get a process in there, then they're confident, then they know how to do it. I've been around a lot of service writers and stuff, good, bad, or indifferent. They all like money. Let's face it. We all show up to make money. I mean, there's stuff that's fun. And you always tell me that I was like born at Disneyland because I have like 2 bad days a year. And one of those days is a half day, but you still got to make money. And I don't care who you are in the store. It may not be your number one thing, but if you didn't pay them for a month or two, they probably wouldn't keep showing up. But I'm telling you, if you went to your top sales guy and say, here's $5,000 extra for buying these extra cars, you won't have to ask him to take in another trade again. And he'll want to learn the stuff, but he's got to know what to learn. It's not just, hey guys, we're spiffing cars, go buy more. Great. And unfortunately, a lot of stores do that. We're buying cars out of service now. And then I hear, well, ICO doesn't work. Bro, there's a reason it doesn't work. It's you.
It's funny you say that. Like, so there's a video in here. I'll allude to it. It's well, I'm going to tell you it's the most boring video in this series, and the reason why is because it deals with something that only managers or GSMs would really need to know, like understanding. But it's the basic fundamentals of your cash flow, right? You're building a buying center, not a trade-ins, right? But your buying center is okay. You're building a buying center, and so I really go into the cash flow. There's three, like typically there's three setups you see within stores, right? Full independence, so you have operating cash, like your bank is flush, operating, part flooring, and then all flooring, right? So you have your all cash, your hybrid, and then all flooring department. Well, oddly enough, people said, well, why'd you make that video? I'm like, have you ever seen a buyer, you decided you wanted to do a buying center, and then you tell them you're not doing certain things, and they go, I don't understand why. Do you think it'd be good to know if they understand how those things work so they understand the reasoning why you can't do certain things? And you don't need a deep dive and like all the semantics of a flooring company and all the like nonsense that comes with that. But if you're at a store that's in a like that pays all their inventory off cash, and then you're in a store that only uses a flooring line, there are very specific things you can and can't do because of the guidelines from whatever flooring line you have. So, and if you told a buyer and it was a client, a prospective client that said, well, we're all flooring line. I hadn't heard that in a while. I was kind of surprised because I was like, that really limits a lot of things you can do. And so I said, okay, well, how many cars? What are you looking at? What are we trying to build for you? And he's like, oh, I want to buy 50 to 60 cars. I said, okay. Well, then I explained to him how this works, right? And what do you have to do? And he's like, oh, it'd be pretty hard to buy 50 or 60 cars. I'm like, you think? Because again, if you're a flooring line, now you have to have title, right? In order to relieve your account and things. So just doing a video like that is like, what if you empowered your people to understand just pieces of the business? And that's the most boring one in there. And I bring that one up because it's the thing no one ever talks about. But when you go to build a buying center, it is literally the reasoning for why people can only buy so much, right? Like if your dealership keeps $2 million in the bank and I went and bought 50 cars at 50,000 a piece and taxes are due and payrolls due, guess what we have, what we don't have in our bank? Enough money. So understanding certain things, I think, is like when you allow people to do that is, are you putting them in a position to, one, create the experience to where it doesn't overpromise and underdeliver? Two, now they feel like they're needed or they're empowered. Like you're not trying to gatekeep. You're not trying to like, don't worry about it. Just do what I tell you. Because I think gatekeeping is one of these things that's a real like black eye on the business is we're so afraid we're going to lose our job. We don't want to show anybody anything else. I've always professed, which you saw, and I think you were kind of the same way. I know when you were at VW, like, is I'm going to show you guys everything I do. And if for some reason you take my job, I either stopped doing my job or there is a better than fair chance I'm getting promoted because we put ourselves in a position where it got bigger, better, whatever. I'm doing something above that. But to sit there and say, I'm not going to show you something or I'm going to hold back on stuff because I'm worried about my job. That's that old stop pointing the finger, start pointing the thumb, because like you're only hurting yourself. Like when I was a closer, it was I'll show you guys everything. Now I'll be 100% honest. It was for selfish reasons, guys. I don't want you to think I'm a saint. That is far from true. That is not me. I want to guess, if they knew everything I did, how many times could I actually get credit for the close without having to go in? Like I'm going to build my team. I'm going to build my team and make them strong. So when they need me, it's because they're not there yet, right? I'll go in and I'll get it done. But if I build them strong enough not to need me, isn't that like what you ideally want to do is work smarter, not harder? Like build your team to be self-sufficient so that you can reap the rewards without having to put in more. And they would always tell me like, Darrell, you're just sitting out there. Your guys are closing the deal. I'm like, they'll call me if they need me. I promise you. If they don't need me, then I did my job by training them and preparing them for war. And no one ever got that. But I always think it's interesting because it's like, why are we not trying to put people in a position to win, right? And so by doing this, and when it comes out, I'm very excited. I've seen a couple of the videos edited. They are really, really good. One of them, okay, spoiler alert, you actually get to see me in a cold plunge. Okay, so Not safe for children. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I'm in a cold plunge for a long amount of time, more than a couple minutes, to illustrate a point. But we did some funny different things. We did some other ones. But the walk around was kind of the big one. Ben has actually seen this walk around. It did win national accolades. I'm surprised no one decided to use it, but hey, that's okay. I appreciate you didn't, because now it's mine. Okay. And it is patented. But it's designed, like Ben said, if you showed people this walk around, and Ben's seen it, so he's seen how effective it is, and that helped you make a little bit more gross, or helped you get more trades, and your people felt more confident because it was less of a dynamic of confrontation and more of a dynamic of connection. Like Ben said, if you made 10 more trades a month, 10, we're not talking about anything nuts. That's 120 trades a year. If you retailed 70%, like, what does that do for your bottom line? Mm-hmm. Right. And if you do the math, right, 3,000 a car, you retailed 70% of them. So 90, and at 3,000, that's $270,000. What would you pay to obviously increase that? Right. And you ask yourself that, you're like, oh, I'd pay this, and everyone's gonna have a different number. Well, whatever number you came up with, as long as it wasn't free, I'm probably less than what you thought. Right. And the reason why is because I wanted to create a dynamic that was available for everyone. Right. It was like, for this amount of money, it was going to be less. It essentially would be a 1-car deal to take care of this. Right. And so it was, because again, it has to provide ROI. But we've had 4 people beta in it. And I'm funny that, Ben, we did not talk about this, but funny enough, the first 2 dealers, it increased by 10 and 11 the first month.
Crazy, isn't it?
So, and it was funny you use those numbers, because I was like, man, it's almost like he was at the store or something. So I think it's just an interesting thing when we talk about the experience, right? We have Ben, who, he goes everywhere. He's got a massive territory, and he talks to dealers that, guys, when I say we're talking major metros, and then we're talking in the sticks type of dealers. So everything you can see, like the 500 car a month store to the 20, 30 car a month store. And interestingly enough, he sees the same thing that I see, and the things that we really need to focus on is, what are you doing for that experience, right? What are you doing for that connection? And I know when I say those 2 words, we immediately think for our customer. I want you to take a pause for a minute. No, for your staff. Mm-hmm. Yes, for your customer, that is important. But like Ben said, if you paid your people to do a service drive thing, do you think they're going to love their job? They are going to be jacked, even if they don't ever get a car deal because they don't involve themselves in it. That's their choice. But the fact that you've offered this ability to do something, they're going to be like, holy cow. Like, is anyone else doing this? Right? You make yourself the place people want to work for, which in turn, if they want to work for you, they have that energy. And then when they have that energy and they have that vibe, now guess what ends up happening for your customers? Now, Ben obviously alluded to it. It's not that simple. We're giving you a very grand gesture of like, this is where you start, right? The idea, you do have to put processes in. You do have to think about, okay, what do you expect from this? Because it needs to be measurable. You can't just say, oh, we're going to do this and just hope it happens. Okay. Mm-hmm. All hope is a wish without a plan.
Yep.
So you do have to put a little bit of legwork in, whether you contact me, you contact Ben because he's in your store, because he can help you with certain things. You want some of this type of training, but it's, guys, take that first step, right? Make yourself the place people want to be. Make yourself place that people want to come, right? And really then dive into that experience, because I can tell you, and that's why it was important to have Ben on here. When Ben and I would go out, that's all it was service. Okay. And saving them, not saving the business. Yes, that's what we're there to do, but saving them from continuing the same mistake, right? Essentially saying, guys, let's stop the madness, the insanity, and let's give you a different plan forward that's a little less, aggravating than what you've been doing. And when we left, I was car Jesus. Okay. I should have grown my hair out a little bit longer, but it was funny because Ben, and it's kind of one of these things we do, guys, is Ben, I promise you, I have seen this guy upset for maybe 3 hours for one day in 10 years. Like, and this guy should want to snap people's necks sometimes because it's so frustrating, but that's why he's Disneyland. Like, this guy never is upset. And for me, it was going in and explaining, guys, and showing, right? Not just telling, but showing, hey guys, not only do I know this works because I did it in multiple stores as a director, Then I was a trainer, and now I'm confident in saying that I am maybe not number one, because number one, I don't want the target on my back. So I'm going to say in the top 3 experts in the country on how to develop and get you results with acquisition strategies, buy centers. And I can say I have built the largest buying center in the country. 200 plus cars a month, private party acquisition, not counting ICO or any of that other stuff. So it was more than that with everything in bind. And for 3 years running, like constantly going. And you can have those results too. That takes a lot of work. I do not want you to think it was just like we turned the light switch on and that happened. That was month after month increasing. And then we got that thing going. And then it was management, because in all fairness, then you're just managing things. It's going so fast. You're just managing. Like it takes care of itself. If you've ever been to the stores Ben's talking about, when Roseville Toyota 900 cars, it looked like the B movie. They would have 30 cars out by lunch and you never saw a customer. It was like this, but it was harmonious. Like it just worked, right? Because you get that process going and everyone kind of knows what they're doing. I know what Ben's going to do. I know what Joey's going to do. I know it. And you just, and it's that trust of like, don't worry, Ben's got it. Ben's going to do it. Like, because you have to. So I think it's interesting though, to get that perspective, Ben. And, before we wrap this up, what I'd also like to ask you is, when you're out there, right, if there was one thing you would tell a dealer to focus on this next coming year that they didn't this year, what do you think the most impactful thing would be for them for next year? Your insights, right? Not what I think, but what you're actually seeing.
So before I get into that real quick, just going back, it's funny when you and I would go to stores and I'd watch you do your thing. I really equated it to like In-N-Out Burger and Chick-fil-A. Okay. There's a lot of guys out there that help stores. There's a lot of consulting. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of fast food restaurants. And everybody watching this would agree. If you got in a line with 20 cars in front of you at In-N-Out Burger or 5 at Burger King, which one are you going to get your food faster? It's always going to be In-N-Out, because they have such a streamlined process. Same thing with Chick-fil-A. I took my mom there for the first time a little while ago. And she's like, honey, we don't have this much time. There's like 40 at the drive-thru. I said, Mom, don't worry about watch. It'd be like 10 minutes. We got up there. She's like, that was the most amazing thing I've ever experienced. I mean, and my mom's 82. She's experienced a lot. But it's the same thing when you go into stores. When you set a process and get it consistent, it gives everyone, the salespeople, the salesman, everybody confidence in what they're doing, especially if that customer comes back later or they refer a friend or something. Because nothing's worse than the experience not meeting the expectation. It's like the old days when you used to invite the credit criminals in, and then the sales guys and managers would bitch about bad credit. We just invited them. Like, what? Like, this doesn't even make any sense. You get customers coming in. My aunt recently bought a car from CarMax. They live in Arizona. I said, what made you do it? She goes, because it was easy and I knew I didn't have to worry about getting a better price. Now, she's older, but she's worth a fortune. I mean, she could probably bought 100 cars, but she went there because it was easy and stress-free because of the process. And she knew she paid too much for the car. That's what was a crack up. It's not about the price sometimes. Why do nice restaurants exist? Yeah, the food's good, but it's the experience that you go through. And when you become the place to not only buy a car, but if I want to sell my car or my trade, they make it easy. They don't grind me to death. It doesn't take 6 hours. In and out, let's go, just like a burger. So if I went back to like one thing, just to re-go over the question, you're looking for one thing that dealers should do, or
let's say industry or the dealerships you see, right? But it's really the industry, right? What's one thing based on what you see, the struggle, the compressions, all the things we're dealing with? There's so many dynamics, right? And you can use those as excuses or you can use those to empower you. What is the one thing you would tell a dealer, hey, for next year, like, you start right now so that you can get it going, but by next year, this is where you really want to put your focus to ensure you're going to be better next year? Where would you tell them to go? What would it be what you would tell them, right? Not like what I want them to hear or would say, but where do you see and what do you think is going to be the best course of action for them?
Well, you said it once and I'll say it again. Nothing is more valuable than a used car to a dealership, because it benefits every employee in the store. Every single employee, service, sales, F&I, finance, the business office. I mean, it helps everyone. And it's like the good old days where they used to say, and we sell new cars to have good used cars. Because new, it's all over the place. You know, it depends on the market, depends on the this, depends on the interest rates. Used cars is pure art. New cars is science. A plus B equals a black truck. But used cars, man, you got to know what you're doing. So I would really press the fact for stores, they need a strong process. I mean, not to beat that drum, but I mean, you got to have a strong process, and you got to help your people. You got to help your people. You know, I used to have a spiff for the craziest write up, and it was like 100 to 150 bucks. I'll never forget. Tracy Nevin came in on a freaking napkin, and my sales manager next to me when I was at GSM, he got a little, not mad, but a little front. And I said, stop. He got a customer that would not come in the freaking door. Tracy had a napkin in his pocket, wrote him up, and we sold him a Passat. No one else could have sold him that car because this customer was not going for the program. I mean, this guy was the definition of a pain, but he could have left a pain and not bought anything, and we didn't make any money, or he still left being a pain and we sold a car. Now, did we make a great friend for life? I don't know. I don't really care. Neither did he. But we sold a car, or Tracy sold a car, and it was crazy. I mean, his handwriting sucked. It was a crappy napkin, but he got a commitment and moved the car forward because I told him, bring anything up. I don't care. If they got a pulse, we'll try to figure out how to get them in a car. It doesn't always work. But these dealers that just fight and grind their people, I don't care if they come up and ask the same question 1,000 times, because let's face it, salespeople do that. You got to help them. You got to help. You know, it's like the old phrase of, you know, reprimand in private and praise in public. They got to do that more, because a lot of dealerships, and I've been into some meetings where I've told the GM or GSM afterwards, you shouldn't do that. I'm an outsider, and I just heard what you did to your guy. They don't know I'm a car guy. You shouldn't do that in front of me or anybody, because now you embarrass them. Because that guy left that room. He's not mad. He freaking hates you. And he's going to tell everybody, and then it's going to burn him in the ground, and you think he's going to sell a car? No, figure it out later. But just be helpful and get a process and stick to it. Even if your process sucks, if it's consistent, it's better than just, we're going to wing it.
No, I think that's great. That the story about the write up. I mean, I love it, right? Because that's the empowerment of, like, there's nothing more important than making the deal, right? So, you know, wrapping this up, guys, and Ben, stay here with me. But what we just talked about, right, from experience to what we're seeing to used cars to, you know, possibly you guys, like, hey, if you have questions about wanting to get better or empowering your people, right, let me know. But at the end of the day, right, what he just said is great, right? Wrapping that all up is, you guys probably should have a focus of used cars. What that means, selling, buying, acquiring, whatever it is, you want to make that a focus. But at the same time, right, finding ways to make sure that your people feel empowered, okay, and that they want to be there, right? Because that is your engine, right? You know, in order to have great artists or great art, you have to have great artists, right? So you want your people to feel the best so that they can do the best work. I appreciate all you guys listening. You guys have been brought to the streets with Ben January, okay, trying to give you guys some insights and smarts to take back to your dealership. Ben, stay here with me. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you guys next week.